You know, growing up too fast isn't something you choose. It's something life chooses for you. It happens quietly, almost secretly, like childhood slipping out the back door while you're busy trying to calm everyone else down. You wake up one day, and the toys that once made you happy look like relics from a world that doesn't belong to you anymore. You start speaking like an adult, not because you're wise, but because you had to be. Because somewhere along the line, someone needed you to hold it together when they couldn't. And that's the thing, isn't it? People see maturity in a child and call it admirable. They say you're so strong, so responsible, so understanding. But what they don't realize is that behind every overly mature child is a story of premature pain. Behind every calm face is a storm they had to learn to silence. You learned to smile politely while your heart trembled. You learned to say it's okay when it was. You learned to comfort others while quietly falling apart inside. You didn't grow up, you adapted. There's a difference. Growing up is natural, adapting is survival, and survival has a cost. It takes your softness first, that innocent, curious softness that lets a child ask why 1,000 times. When you grow up too fast, you stop asking why. You already know that sometimes there's no answer, that sometimes the adults don't fix things. Sometimes they are the things that need fix. You see, when you're forced to be strong too early, your body keeps growing, but some part of your soul stops. It freezes in time, right at the age where you needed to be held, not told to be brave. It's strange, years later, you might have a career, responsibilities, even a family, but inside, there's still that small, tired child watching the world, wondering when it'll finally be their turn to rest. You might notice that you're overly cautious, that you don't trust easily, that you're always preparing for something to go wrong. Not because you're pessimistic, but because life trained you to expect instability. You became the protector, the fixer, the emotional adult long before you understood what childhood even meant. And maybe people praise you for being mature, dependable, wise beyond your years, but deep down, you know, it wasn't wisdom, it was necessity. You had to learn how to read people's moods like weather patterns just to stay safe. Maybe you had parents who fought, or a mother who cried too often, or a father who was absent even when he was there. Maybe you were the quiet one who learned that silence was safer than speak. You might remember the sound of tension more vividly than laughter, and so you became the peacekeeper, the one who made things okay. You became the adult in the room, the tiny therapist who listened, absorbed, and never got to say, I need help. But here's something no one tells you. That child, the one who grew up too fast, never really disappears. They just hide behind your adult face. They show up in moments when you feel exhausted, but can't explain why. They show up when someone says, you're so strong, and instead of feeling proud, you feel unseen. They show up when you can't cry, even when you want, because that child learned early that crying didn't change anything. It just made you feel smaller in a world that already overlooked you. And maybe even now you find it hard to relax. You overthink, you overprepare, you overgive, you overdo everything, because somewhere inside, you still believe love is earned through performance. You learned that being useful was safer than being needy. You learned that keeping the peace was more important than being honest. You learned that if you stayed composed, you wouldn't be abandoned. But let's talk about that, shall we? The psychology behind this, not in cold terms but in human one. When a child is forced into emotional maturity too early, they skip a developmental stage that's supposed to teach them safety and trust. That skipped stage doesn't disappear, it just hides waiting. It manifests as anxiety, hyper-independence, people-pleasing, or emotional detachment. You learned to be the adult before you had the chance to be the child. And the adult you became was built around managing pain, not exploring joy. The world calls it resilience. Psychology calls it adaptation. I call it heartbreak, in slow motion. Because no one should have to build emotional armor before they've even learned how to dream safely. Sometimes when you grew up too fast, you don't even know how to accept care anymore. Someone offers you help, and your first instinct is to say, not because you are, but because the idea of being taken care of feels foreign. You're not used to being the one who receives. You're used to being the one who holds everything together. You might find yourself in relationships where you're the caretaker again, giving, until you burn out. You don't even realize you're repeating the same emotional pattern, trying to earn love by being indispensable, because the child inside you still believes that love is something you maintain, not something you deserve naturally. And isn't it funny in a tragic kind of way that the same child who never got to play ends up becoming the adult who doesn't know how to rest? You feel guilty doing nothing. You feel restless when things are calm. Peace feels suspicious, like it's hiding a threat. You wait for the chaos, the disappointment, the letdown, because your nervous system was wired to expect it. I think about that often, how trauma doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's in the way you hesitate before asking for help, the way you apologize too much, the way you shrink your needs down to something manageable, the way you smile to diffuse tension that isn't even yours. You've built an entire personality around safety, but deep down, what you really crave is softness, to be held, to be understood without performing strength. It's okay, you can admit it now. You don't always want to be strong. You want to be seen. You want to be allowed to fall apart sometime. You want someone to look at you and say, you don't have to hold the world together anymore. And maybe that's the hardest part, realizing that the person who used to hold everyone else together now has to learn how to hold themselves gently.